I was with the Admiral. There were two memorable flights. One time, we were going to a place called Phu Quoc Island down in the Gulf of Thailand. It was a pretty good sized base down there. It was a Vietnamese base. And it seemed to me, but if you look at it on the map, it's this big old island just off, not too far off the coast. But you had these Army pilots, and they relied on radio signals of some kind. You'd go from place to place on the signal, and they didn't even really have to navigate. Well, the signal went out in Phu Quoc Island that day, and they're going out over the ocean, the island, come back and back. And they had to confide in the Admiral that they were actually lost. And they had maps, and we had the flag secretary was there. He was a lieutenant commander. He surely must have known something about this. And nobody could help. And finally, the flag secretary said, "Admiral, I think we have to abort this mission," such as it was. And but finally, we went way north. We were over Cambodia for a while, and come back. And they never found this damn island. I don't think they didn't want anybody to know about that. That was such a, and the Admiral was furious. That was Admiral Salzer. And another time, we had the same plane, and we took off. The Admiral was aboard, and we didn't get very far, and one engine was spewing oil, and the pilot thought it just might start burning any second now. So he feathered it, or whatever they said. He stopped that engine, and the plane could fly with one engine, obviously, because I'm here. And turned around, and we landed again, and there's a whole array. You know, when you come in on a flight that's had problems, how they line up all the equipment with the blinking lights along with it, and stop all the other traffic. We could come in and taxied over to a place, this big, huge fire truck with a big nozzle in the front, ready to shoot foam on you if you start. But first, it was the port engine, and that's the side where the door to the plane was. They had to get us out of there first, so we stopped and got off, and then they sprayed the thing down and cooled it off, and it was okay. But another time, Master Chief of the Navy came to visit in 1968, and I was the escort officer for him. He went everywhere. He was in country for 3 weeks. A guy named Delbert Black. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He was the first Master Chief of the Navy, and a nice man. I thought the world of Delbert. Anyway, we were down. I think we were in Fubai maybe. Anyway, one of those central delta towns or villages or base, and everything routine. You know, we're ready to leave. We get in this plane. He takes off, and all of a sudden he lost power. We were just about taking off, and he lost power. Oh my God, we're going down. And room, and it picked up again just like that. Off we went. Wow. And that the pilot said, admittedly, he was a little bit taken aback. And I never knew. Well, I don't know enough anything about airplanes, but that was a close one.
George, it said the Admiral, when you go on a field trip as an advisor, wanted you to come right back to him without cleaning up. And
that was just Admiral Zumwalt.
Right. So, as in a field trip, were you in the jungles? Were you in the rivers? What were you with?
Well,
the wind?
wherever. It depended where you went or where you finished up. Because I would go from one place. I didn't just go out and then come back the next day or a few days later. I would make a field trip. If I was going up to I Corps, I would go to about 4 or 5 different places up there, and spend a night here and 2 nights there, and so forth. and then finally come back. And like it's the last place I was at, it was kind of rough. Some of them didn't have much of anything in facilities. I mean, you know, there was never, didn't even think about a warm shower or anything like that. And I hate cold showers. Even that water is probably 80, 85 degrees, the cold. The hot water,
Yeah.
well, they're all, you know, the same. And that's too cold for me. I hated it. But of course, you take a shower anyway. And you get cleaned up pretty well. But even just being there, the heat was so pervasive and so intense. It was not humidity. You always felt. You know, up to the time I was in Vietnam, I had never had a air-conditioned car. And I vowed, when I get home, I didn't have a car anymore. I sold my car, and I'm going to buy an air-conditioned car, and which I did. And of course, now you wouldn't think of being without it, but at the time, a lot of cars were not air-conditioned.
But a field trip, George, were you in combat with the guys, or you were?
No, I can't say I was in combat. No, I didn't do that. I mean, it didn't have to. We would go. I went out with a SEAL team one time. I was by myself. I was traveling alone, and I wound up on an LST in the Delta that had boats. They had a little barge alongside, and we had boats that operated out of there. And there was a SEAL team was stationed, probably maybe temporarily, I don't know, but they were there. And I got talking to the SEAL team leader, and I told him about when the Master Chief of the Navy was in town in '68. He wanted to go on an operation with a SEAL team, and I was his escort officer. And I said, you just can't do that. I mean, what if you get hurt or killed or something? I mean, it's not that I was worried about my skin, but I mean, I don't think you should take a chance. You're not trained for that. He was probably better trained than I was. He at least was a gunner's mate. But fact is, I at least had been through field training with Camp Pendleton and all, and I knew something about survival and all that. But anyway, yeah, I told him about that. He said, well, I'll tell you what, we're going out on an operation. I don't know, it was that day or that next day or whatever, down to, I think, what's the name of that place? Thought I'd never forget the name of it. It was a place downriver, not terribly far from there. And I remember one distinctive thing about it, there had been a bridge across the river at that point, and the Viet Cong blew it up. So the bridge was no longer of any use. Well, wherever it was. Says, we're going down there, and so this warrant officer was also visiting for some reason. I'm not sure. He wanted to go too. So I said, we'll take you along. So we get with them. Now they're armed to the teeth. We had to surrender our arms when we got on board the ship immediately. You can't walk around carrying I had a 45 or later a 38 special and a M16. You can't walk around on a Navy ship like that. You have to turn your weapons in. So we just went with these guys without weapons. I don't know where our head was. I mean, but we were the SEALs. We don't need weapons. And we had no idea what to expect. So we went down to this place, Bentray it was, Bentray. And we got into the village, and this SEAL team leader was a young lieutenant. He said, well, as far as you guys can go, we have to go in and they had a rendezvous. Apparently they were going to rendezvous with an informant, because he had a big bunch of Vietnamese currency in his pocket. And not that they told us, they wouldn't tell us anything. And so we just sat there in this